Economics dominated today. I mentioned Liz Truss earlier. Here's a very quick clip of what she had to say at 12:30 today.
So let's start with axing the tax. We need to unleash business across Britain. We need people to want to invest in our country. We need businesses to be able to expand, to grow, to create new jobs, to create new ideas. That's why I'm calling upon the Chancellor at the autumn statement to put corporation tax back down to 19%. And frankly, if we can get it lower, the better.
On the theme of taxes, here was the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Jeremy Hunt, giving the main speech on the stage at 2 o'clock this afternoon.
Conservatives will always protect public services, but we're also honest about the taxes that pay for them. After a once-in-a-century pandemic and the biggest energy crisis in a generation, the level of tax is too high. We were right to protect jobs and families, and thanks to Rishi's furlough scheme, we recovered faster from the pandemic than others. But with an ageing population and a war in Europe, public spending is still growing faster than the economy.
To analyse all of this, I'm joined by Liam Halligan, GB News' business and economics editor, and by Lord Frost, the negotiator of our Brexit deal. Liam, you chaired the Liz Truss meeting earlier on. It was like a revivalist meeting, wasn't it? I mean, there was a real buzz in that room, a sense that the Conservative Party's gone too far away from where it should be.
It reminded me of that famous church scene in the Blues Brothers. I expected people to start backflipping down the aisle. It really felt to me, I mean, it will be written up as splits and gaffes and the Tory party at war with one another. It felt to me like democracy, because there you had a Prime Minister who, of course, was voted in by Tory activists, openly challenging a Prime Minister who wasn't voted in by Tory activists.
Yes, I mean, they were her voters in that room, weren't they?
Absolutely, and the media was there, the world's media was there,
yes.
And it was deliberately timed, Nigel. It was 1 hour before the Chancellor's speech, and it was an open challenge to the Chancellor. I want you to cut taxes now. And Liz Truss wasn't alone. She was joined by former Home Secretary Priti Patel, former Business Secretary Jacob Rees-Mogg, former Environment Secretary Ranil Jayawardena, and within my questioning of those four people, we learnt that the Conservative Growth Group, a group of backbenchers, is now 60 strong. And of those 60 backbenchers, many have pledged that if at the autumn statement or the spring budget next year, the Chancellor raises the total share of GDP that is taxation, it's currently 37%, the highest it's been for many, many years. If taxation goes up in the next big fiscal statement, those MPs have pledged to not vote with their government. Now,
but he's not going to do that in an election year, is he?
Well, let's see. Let's see.
Yeah.
He certainly said today that he wasn't going to. He was pushing back against the idea that the Conservative parties can cut taxes. I don't think that means that he won't cut taxes before the general election. I think it's a function of timing. I think Hunt and Sunak, what they want to do is they want to save the big Tory tax cut, the clear blue water, for as near to the next general election as they possibly can.
After 13 years of taking us to the highest tax burden since
That's right.
1951.
So that means not in the November statement as Liz Truss and her acolytes want, but possibly in the spring.
And thoughts on the Hunt speech?
I thought the Hunt speech, the centrepiece of the Hunt speech, of course, was raising the minimum wage. Well, that's very easy for a government to do.
In line with inflation.
Because businesses pay for that extra minimum wage. Small and medium-sized enterprises in particular that often pay the minimum wage in hospitality, pubs, restaurants and so on. They're the ones that will have to foot that bill. He said he wants to freeze the size of the civil service. But apart from that, it was pretty thin gruel, Nigel.
And only lasted 15 minutes.
I was amazed at how short it was.
Yeah.
And I know Jeremy Hunt well. He's quite an eloquent guy, despite his sometimes robotic delivery. It felt to me as if this was a speech that had been written by committee. And that shows me how nervous Downing Street is.
Well, let's get on to the Conservative Party. Lord Frost, I mean, there was a battle for ideas going on, which in one way was very refreshing today. But the party's split on every single issue. It's split on HS2, on net zero. Half the party still doesn't believe in Brexit. I mean, you're all over the place, aren't you?
Well, I think the philosophical bounds of conservatism has got a bit wide in recent years. We definitely need to.
Oh dear, oh
We
dear.
definitely need to narrow down. We need to narrow down. We need to give people what the activists want, what I want, what people at the Growth rally wanted, which is a bit of the old religion, which is what we know delivers results, what delivers growth, which is cutting tax, cutting spending, smaller state, deregulation, lifting some of the burden of net zero, and yes, the subjects that weren't talked about, which were immigration
And Brexit.
And Brexit.
Brexit. No talk. I mean, fringe meetings talking about Brexit, but almost no talk on the stage about arguably the one real achievement of this government since 2019. I put it to you that half of your party are embarrassed by Brexit.
Well, I do think that some of the parties are embarrassed by Brexit, and it is a great pity because it is becoming established outside this room that Brexit is somehow failing, and it is not true. We've seen from the economic figures in the last few weeks that growth is much higher than people thought. Investment is well above its 2019 level. We've got good trade programs going ahead. What we need to do is explain, and we need to use the benefits. We need to use this legislative freedom to deregulate, to boost growth and control the borders.
But it's linked, David, to the other elephant in the room. Net migration is running at all-time records. There is no prospect of it going down. And this is without even discussing what's happening in the English Channel, where, by the way, 900 have come in the last 3 days, and there are more going to come tomorrow. The reason people think Brexit's failing is because one of the functions of a sovereign state is the ability to control your borders, the basic promise and belief that by voting for Brexit, we would be in control, and the numbers have gone up. Can you see why there's such disappointment in the Red Wall?
I absolutely can. I share it. Immigration, legal, illegal, is too high. It is far too high, and we need to bring it down. And illegal immigration is within our powers. The government decides the conditions for visas.
I know.
It can change that if it wishes, and it needs to change it. Not necessarily with a snap of the finger, but we need a programme to get it down very, very dramatically in the next year or two.
Isn't the truth, guys, of what's really going on here that, Sunak's made some comments over the course of the last couple of weeks. It's seen that the Labour lead perhaps is a bit softer than we believed before, but most delegates here, most MPs, realistically know they can't win the next election. Isn't what's really happening here a battle for what the party's going to be after an election defeat?
I think that's true, Nigel. When you and I were at the Conservative Democratic Organisation dinner last night, Priti Patel gave a speech in which she lauded GB News. Nice.
Yeah.
But it was basically a leadership pitch for who is going to control the post-Sunak party. And in the interviews you did there with delegates, which you showed, it was interesting that the older people, many of whom will have Conservative voting friends, thought they could win.
Yeah.
But the younger people, in many ways,
More
a lot more representative. Yeah. Many of them have friends who aren't Conservative voters, and they think that they're going to lose. Look, in the last few weeks, Sunak has actually started to do some politics. He started to get beyond, I want to be nicey nice to everybody and be a grown-up, and he started to make some decisions. The art of political leadership is understanding that you're going to annoy some people when you make decisions. Bringing the ban on petrol and diesel cars, pushing it back to 2035, allowing drilling in the North Sea. All of these things annoy the bien-pensants, they annoy the political and media class, but a lot of the silent majority out there across the UK will think, well, that's probably the right thing
absolutely.
to do.
No,
So
absolutely.
he started to show some kind of grown-up leadership. It's probably too little, too late. They probably are going to lose, but at least now, I think delegates feel there's something to fight for.
Lord Frost, final word to you. Can he turn it around?
I think he can turn it around if he does the right things. We need a Conservative vision. How is the country going to be different under Conservative leadership? We need the tax cuts. I hope they do come in March. We need a proper energy policy, proper look at net zero, fracking. There's no shortage of things to do.
Oh, no.
We just need to go and do them in the 12 months we've got.
Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed.